4, we were a quorum. I guess we should do the roll call first. Right time.
If you just want to for roll call.
Great. So we have Constance here, present. Emily, present. Adria, Anna, and I, so we're 4. Okay, that's taken care of. I'd like to approve the minutes of April. I didn't have a quorum at that time. Are there any questions on my minutes? Okay, so you're okay with them? Okay, great. So that's passed. You're a great group tonight. I'm going to take the staple first, if that's okay with the Arden.
Absolutely.
Yeah, we have a staple, which is a little bit different. I think that Farah has sent it to you, and you've read it. Is there any reason to go over it some more? You're all satisfied with it. It sounds like a great initiative of the sanitation department. I have a computer standing there for years, and I didn't know what to do with it. And that'll be taken care of, so it's a good thing. I was a little concerned about the location, but Farah has dulled my objections, so.
Do we want Priyanka to talk about the event a
Yes,
little bit?
would you talk about it a little bit? We're not familiar with the 3x3 design, and it was a little odd to have you representing the sanitation department, and Farah got it all together. So is there anything you want to tell us about it?
Sure. Just to give you some context, I'm Priyanka Jain, Principal and Director of Development at 3x3. We are a community-centered design practice. We do urban planning projects and community engagement projects. And Department of Sanitation gave us a year-long contract. As part of this contract, it meets a requirement. There's a certain law requirement which requires Department of Sanitation to host reuse and recycling events, 1 per community board district. And we have only been helping them on the execution side of it. So the model is we co-host it with a community partner or multiple community partners in a community board district. In this case, the library would be the partner. The event would happen inside. The outreach and promotion of it happens through the library listservs. If the additional partners, they do it. And Department of Sanitation also put it on their website for general public information. It's pretty simple. If you want to visualize it, it's all we need is a park truck permit. So a truck comes, they do the heavy lifting for us, where they get 3 containers. And on our end, there would be 4 people who would come inside. They would, if the library is not providing, they would set up tables. There's a lot of educational materials on additional initiatives that Department of Sanitation is doing. And there is a collection process for it's a free event. The people can come and they can deposit any electric materials that qualify under this program that you normally cannot recycle using curbside collection. And it's as simple as that. There's nothing more complicated than that to it. I think they hired us to make the experience more pleasant and to make sure it's educational. We do specialize in educational communication, so that was the intent of it. I'm happy to answer any additional questions there might be.
I'm just wondering, when people bring their, say, computers, to the library, for disposal,
Mm-hmm.
do they bring it into the library? They have a place where they're going to store it until you come with your truck?
Usually, it has never happened that they come before the event. The event time is usually disclosed. We've never seen that happen before. Usually, people come during the duration of the event, and we have 3 containers that the truck comes with, where we put based on sorting, and then after the event is closed, the truck removes it, the 3 containers. So it is pretty simple, and nothing is left in the library. It will be all taken care of by the vendor we have, and that vendor then weighs it and it deposit it at the correct recycling center of DSNY.
So it's only the one-time event?
It is
Is
a
that right?
one-time event. It happens every year, I think, until 2027. So if you're interested in holding it again next year, and say the community board aid is interested, bringing in additional partners, we'd be more than happy. Even for this event, if you want to share it with your community members, more than welcome to. I'm happy to share the flyer that we've been using for this event.
And, that flyer was distributed in the community?
Through the library listserv, it's usually done more closer to the event, so we are still a little there's still some distance, but it's usually given to the library, and library usually gives, like, whoever is co-hosting the event with us, it's usually given to them to distribute it to the members, and then it's also put up on DSNI website. So the Department of Sanitation website has a it has a consistent calendar of these reuse and recycling events, what date they're happening and what is the location they're happening.
Would we have it on ours too?
Well, that's, if you could send us the flyer, we'll post as well.
That would be great. Yeah, we would be happy to send it. Should I send it to the email which I got the invite from?
Yes, that would be great.
I'll absolutely
I
send it.
didn't understand that, and I'm getting a clearer picture now, because I thought that, the flyers were going to be distributed throughout the community, and that is only up to the library itself. Right?
It's also published on the Department of Sanitation channel, which people who are interested in recycling, they usually preview that website. Like, there's a consistent resource on the Department of Sanitation website.
Uh-huh.
But I'm happy to
Yeah.
also send it to you so you can share it with your community members.
Right, I wouldn't know to look at the sanitation, site, because I don't know what's happening if I don't go to the library. So you would be eliminating a lot of people in the community. But if we pick it up,
Yeah, we can post. And that's our community by Jerome Park Library, so we'll be happy to do that.
Thank
oh,
you.
by the way, the email that we got says Mill Basin Library,
Oh, yeah, it did say Mill Basin Library, but is it not the Jerome
but
Park?
that's in Brooklyn.
Yeah, that's not the library.
Yeah, but they didn't have Jerome Park.
It is mentioned somewhere.
Yeah.
The library might have not yet put it out on their listservs. It might still be. I don't know. I can ask, but I'm also happy to share the flyer with.
It's under your, response to, Farah. You mentioned that you're having this event on, at the Mill Basin Library. which threw me.
Yeah, it's in the location details on the application. But can you confirm the location, the event on May 31st is gonna be at?
The May 31st event is happening at, I did say it's Jerome Park Library, but the note I think has incorrect. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, but it's not on the application.
Yeah, it's Jerome Park Library, and I think I have incorrect. I've mentioned Mill Basin Library incorrect. Let me check it with the people who are leading this event. Yeah, I'm sorry that it mentions the name of the library correct. It might have been copied from a previous SAPO permission.
But the address is correct, so.
The address is correct. The map is
Somebody
correct.
made a mistake.
Yeah, I
Okay,
think it's just the note that has it incorrect.
Okay, any other questions? We're on the staple. I know you just came in. so-
yes.
Oh, okay.
So as the next,
So,
I will send the flyer to you over the email. This that's
Mhm.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
okay, we'll take a vote on it here in committee. We don't have time to do it at a general meeting, so
No,
it's
we
not going to
don't.
be exposed that way.
We can still vote on it if you wanted the general meeting for our
It'll
records,
be over.
but we will put in our recommendations that this is a committee vote.
Yeah,
which
right.
we can do.
Yeah, okay, anyone opposed? Abstention? Okay, you've got your date for your truck.
Thank you.
Can I just ask, how many spots does the truck take? Do you know?
It's not a huge truck. It's like your regular size truck. It would take maybe 2 spots, like a 1.5, but like, so a space of 2. But it's only there for 4 hours.
Would that then be marked that's their parking spot, or who does that, DOT?
Does sanitation or NYPD put up the no parking signs for you, or would the library
So-
take care of that?
We received the permit, we send it to the library. Someone from library would go to NYPD and get the sign, and then the library will hang it based on their contextual understanding of where there might be. They just want to make sure that when the truck is offloading, that it's able to do it closer to the library. But someone from library will put the sign.
There's parking on that street, so they have to have it designated.
Yeah, and if she said the library contacts NYPD, and they're usually very
Good enough.
good. Yeah, about putting a sign up.
Okay, you got it. Good luck. And
Thank you.
thank you for coming.
Absolutely.
So, Arden.
Hello.
Arden is from, the independent, budget, office, and, she's here to tell us all about the art in the school and also in District 10, so I'm looking forward to that.
Excellent. Okay, well, I will get into it. Let me go ahead and share my screen and I will start this slideshow. Oh, and it's not where I thought it would be. One moment, please. Let me just see if I can get it to SOWOP. Okay, I need it to. I did this just earlier today. Let me try sharing my other monitor. Maybe that's the way. All right, let's try this a different way. Okay, how does that look? We full screen?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. All right, so hi everyone. It's great to be here. Thank you for inviting me. Um, like Sylvia said, I'm going to talk about sort of arts teachers and specifically actually cultural development fund programs in New York City public schools, with a focus first on sort of citywide, and then we'll narrow it down to Community School District 10. And so I'm just going to do a quick introduction, sort of what is IBO, who am I, and a little bit about the research that we did and the testimony we did. And then we'll talk about citywide findings to provide that sort of broader context, get into District 10, and then if we have, anyone has questions, feel free to, you're also welcome to just sort of interrupt me, particularly if you're like, I actually don't understand what you just said, because there are going to be a lot of numbers. So please don't feel shy about asking clarifying questions as we go. So first, what is IBO? Maybe most notably, we are not the Mayor's Office of Management and Budget, so we don't sort of hold the power of the purse. We're not sort of deciding who gets what money. What we are is the city's independent, nonpartisan research agency. And part of our powers through the city charter are access to the data of other city agencies on request, which is how we did this analysis that I'm going to share, which is we were kind of combining Department of Education data with data from the Department of Cultural Affairs. As part of our sort of nonpartisanship, we don't do recommendations, we just provide analysis, with the idea that policymakers, advocates, and the public should be able to take our information and confidently use it for sort of whatever purposes they desire. Our goal is sort of informed democracy and not sort of pushing a particular political position. And also we take requests. So we take requests from community boards, we take requests from, in this case, city council. And so please, in the future, please feel free to reach out to us. My portfolio at IBO is sort of a weird one. I cover arts and cultural affairs. So that is the libraries, Department of Cultural Affairs, and then the other half of my portfolio is the criminal legal agencies. So correction, probation, and the Mayor's Office of Criminal Justice. Notably, the Department of Education is not in my portfolio. So if there are a lot of questions about DOE, I may have to follow up, get one of my colleagues to follow up with you all. But I'm sort of role playing in that role a little bit here today with the teacher data that we have. So that's IBO, that's me. And then I'll just a little bit about this analysis to make sure before we look at numbers, everyone sort of understands what we tried to do and some of the limitations. So City Council requested that we look at the distribution of arts teachers and cultural development fund programs in traditional public schools. So that's districts 1 through 32 and D75, which is the special education district. And we looked at that citywide by borough and by school district. The school district is then sort of a supplemental data set. And Farah has a PDF of this that has a link to the testimony that includes the data set if you all are interested in looking at that yourselves. And then the Cultural Development Fund, I'm not sure how familiar folks are with that, but it's basically a grant program run by the Department of Cultural Affairs that provides money to nonprofits to do arts and culture programming throughout New York City. And some of those programs, in fact, many of those programs are in public schools. So that's sort of the connection there. A few limitations. This isn't all arts education programs. There are a lot of different ways that schools interact with the arts. So this doesn't include sort of DYCD after school programs because that's sort of a separate agency, arts partnership programs through the DOE. So this is it's narrowly sort of one program plus arts teachers from the DOE. We also, for the CDF program information, we just have fiscal year 22 data because at the time that was the most recent data Cultural Affairs had given to us. We also see these aren't really data sets that are supposed to talk to each other. So there are sometimes imperfect matches, even though we do feel really confident in sort of the sort of overall magnitude of these numbers. It's just sort of a note that like there might be we might be off one or two here or there. And then lastly, we don't want to sort of give the impression that we think of these programs as a substitute for full-time arts instructions in schools. In particular, because the data that we have don't tell us anything about depth of engagement through these CDF programs. So we can see that a program happened in the school, but we can't see how many times it happened or how long the sort of sessions were. So that's just sort of a few caveats before we look at some numbers. And I'll pause there in case there are any questions about any of that. Okay, hearing none. Let's look at some numbers. All right, so our first table here, I'm going to walk through all of these. I'll try to move relatively quickly, but again, stop me if anything's confusing. We have sort of three different ways of kind of measuring the arts in schools, right? So we have, does the school have at least one CDF program in 2020, FY22? Did they have at least one licensed arts teacher? And did they have at least one certified arts teacher? So breaking down just sort of certification versus licensing, certification happens at the state level. Essentially, it means you as a teacher are qualified to teach a subject. You can have multiple certifications. So I could be certified in physical education and in teaching dance. But then when I get hired by New York City Public Schools, that's when I get my license. And the license, you only hold one at a time. And it's generally the subject that you're teaching. So if I'm hired for physical education, my license is going to be in physical education. So sort of setting that aside, essentially what we see here is that if we look at sort of citywide versus the Bronx, about 3/4 of schools had at least one CDF program and had at least one licensed arts teacher. What we see in the Bronx, and you're going to see this sort of throughout the presentation, we see generally a slightly higher share of schools that have CDF programs, a slightly lower share of schools that have licensed arts teachers. Another thing.
Sorry,
Yeah.
can I ask you to explain the certification versus the license?
Yeah.
One? You're making me question
Yeah.
my own certifications.
Sure. And this is my understanding from our education team. And it could be
Okay.
kind of broad, it could be kind of
I'm
broad,
like,
but generally
wait.
the way that we
None of
think
which
about
are
it.
art, by the way. So yeah,
Okay,
sorry, go ahead.
got it. So our understanding of the certification process is, or the sort of certified versus licensed, is certification is state level, what are you qualified to teach?
Yeah.
Versus license is what are you actually teaching in New York City Public Schools, and that happens at the city level. So you have one license, but you could have multiple certifications. So essentially what we're seeing in this table, for example, is that you have more teachers who are qualified to teach in the arts than are actually teaching in the arts in New York City. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so like I have a special ed cert, but I'm not teaching
Mhm.
special ed, so really I'm just early childhood. Okay.
Gotcha. And
sorry.
occasionally we do see people teaching outside of their certification or license. We only saw
Yeah.
that 97% of the licensed teachers we have here had a certification in the arts. So you could be part of that sort of small percentage that's like sort of teaching outside of their license or certification. But generally speaking, this is sort of the pattern that we see.
Does that
Okay.
answer your question?
Yeah, sorry. Yeah.
No, please. It's always really interesting to hear people's like firsthand experience. So no apology. Okay, so that's sort of, I'm going to focus throughout all of these mostly on sort of the citywide versus Bronx comparison. But we may occasionally, because Manhattan is kind of a surprise, tends to have more resources in these areas, we may also talk about that. But that's certainly the case that we see here. The next thing I'm going to look at is sort of the share of teachers per school that, the share of teachers sort of overall who are licensed arts teachers. And that's been pretty steady. So this is actually 3 years of data. Citywide, about almost 4 in 100 teachers are licensed arts teachers. We see again this like slightly lower share in the Bronx. Whereas in Manhattan, we have a much higher share. And I do want to just sort of caveat this with these figures are going to be impacted by the specialized arts schools. So when we look at the number of schools with more than 20% of their teachers who are arts teachers, 4 out of those 9 schools are in Manhattan. So, and 2 of them are in the Bronx. So you do see a little bit of that sort of skew because of that, which is part of the reason we use the sort of like at least one measure for some of the other tables. All right, and now we have what I call the Venn diagram. So which schools have a licensed teacher, and a CDF program, which had just a licensed teacher, which had just a program, and which had neither. So I'm going to kind of focus here more on the Bronx. Sort of comparable to the both column is comparable to the citywide figures, a little bit more than half of schools having both a licensed arts teacher and a CDF program. And then we see again this sort of split where we have a little bit higher as far as CDF programs go and a little lower on licensed teachers. And then for neither, both the Bronx and Staten Island have almost 1 in 10 schools that didn't have a licensed art teacher and did not receive a CDF program in FY22. Oh,
In
wow.
those schools, they get no art at all?
So that's not necessarily the case. This is one particular program. There are other arts partnerships, but I will say that there is a DOE puts together an arts and schools report each year, and they do measure partnerships, or it's based on a survey. And what we found that was interesting is that the sort of share of schools in the Bronx that reported any kind of arts partnership was still lower than the citywide average. So this 9% isn't necessarily 9% with no art at all, but we do see sort of a pattern overall of the arts of schools in the Bronx partnering less with outside organizations for the arts, and we also see this lower rate of arts teachers in schools. So not to say, sorry, go ahead.
No, just for clarification, the
Yeah.
art teachers, they are really just the art teachers? Because I know that your report also said that music is involved and dance is involved
Sorry,
in the
yes.
cultural affairs. So is this the same kind of thing, or this is separate, just the art?
Yeah, sorry. So when I say the arts, I mean all of the arts, so performing arts and visual arts, not just visual arts. Sorry, I should have clarified that up top. So this is music, dance, theater, visual art, some also like photography, some kind of graphic design programs and like fashion programs. So it is relatively broad. But it's comparable, I would say, to the cultural affairs definition.
And I might have missed it, but what does
Mhm.
CDF stand for?
CDF is Cultural Development Fund. So
okay.
So this is a grant program that the Department of Cultural Affairs runs.
Mhm.
Specifically to get sort of arts across New York City. It is a citywide program, but sort of what we see in the data is that it's not quite reaching all the boroughs equally.
Okay.
All right, so now we're actually going to focus a little. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Debbie.
No, I'm done.
Oh, okay,
Anybody else?
yeah,
There's some
Debbie
hands
on.
up.
Yeah.
You
Was
want it?
Debbie out?
No,
Or
on
did-
Zoom. Hands up on Zoom, not me.
Oh,
Debbie Allen's on.
Hi, good evening. I just wanted to know, was the Bronx ensemble part of the data for music?
Yes, I believe so. Bronx Arts Ensemble. Yeah, I'm very familiar with them. I'm Judith and I are in touch. So yes, this is 21, 22. I believe that they were getting money from DCLA at the time. This is actually this is a great segue actually into the next table. But I don't know for absolutely sure because I didn't look at we could look at individual organizations, but I highly suspect that they would be included in this because they did get a CDF grant, and I know that they do work with schools. So, okay, thank you, Debbie, for the segue. So we're going to actually look now at sort of these organizations that get these CDF grants. Where are they based versus where are the schools they work in based? So it's kind of a complicated table. Right here on the left, we have in the blue sort of where's the organization based, and then these columns on the right are showing was the school they worked in outside of their home borough, or was it in the same borough as the organization? And what we see is, while the Bronx, we only have sort of 55 programs, they are the 55 programs by Bronx-based organizations. The vast majority of those are happening in the Bronx. So that's why, Debbie, I say, I think it's very, very, very likely that they are included in this because again, the vast majority of Bronx-based organizations that are getting grants and working in public schools are doing so in public schools in the Bronx. But one interesting thing about this table, as you may notice, that Manhattan-based organizations are doing the vast majority of these public school programs funded through the CDF. Not entirely surprising because Manhattan-based organizations do receive the majority of funding through this program, and there are more cultural organizations based in Manhattan. But I did find it quite striking to see that, so we are going to definitely see Manhattan-based organizations working in the Bronx, working in Queens, working in Brooklyn, and in Staten Island, and at 65% happening outside of New York. So yeah, kind of a complicated table. I can pause here if there are questions about it, but otherwise we'll move on to District 10. All right. Let's look a little closer. So these tables are going to be pretty familiar now. This is our one, did they have at least one of X table where we have sort of citywide, the Bronx, and then District 10 in bold. And what we see is 88% of District 10 schools had at least one CDF program, which is much higher than the Bronx overall and higher than the city as a whole. But again, this is sort of like the same trend that we see across the Bronx, but even more dramatic, is sort of fewer than 7 in 10 schools had a licensed arts teacher. Again, a slightly higher percentage of teachers who are certified in the arts versus licensed. But yeah, so I'll pause. Any questions about this?
I just want to understand, so
Mhm.
if a school has a CDF program, it might
Yep.
be in place of a school that might lack an arts teacher, you're saying, or is that
I
how
would
they're
say
subbing it?
so, not necessarily. We do see a lot of schools that have both. So about half of schools get both. And I would say my impression from the data would be that there's not really coordination, that you're not really necessarily seeing, because in Queens, for example, we see more schools with teachers and fewer CDF programs. Um, and then we see sort of a mix. So it's not necessarily, it's not clear that there's coordination to prioritize one or the other. That said, I mean, I would say it's, without being partisan, I think it's probably, a good thing if we don't have arts teachers that schools are getting these programs, and I don't think it's controversial to say that that's probably a good thing. But it isn't necessarily coordinated.
Does DOE specify the art teachers either certified or licensed, or does the principal make that decision?
My understanding is it's the principal and the sort of superintendent sort of are making decisions about hiring and not directly DOE overall.
That's how you have to get after them.
And now you have some data to do it. And sort of show, you know, the comparison to sort of the borough as a whole as well as citywide, which I think is very interesting.
They're
All right,
doing
so
very well.
yeah. So I also looked at sort of the average number of arts teachers per school. And while District 10 is lower than the citywide number of arts teachers on average, it is a little higher than the Bronx as a whole. So while we did see that sort of before that, like sort of the share of teachers, or sorry, that at least one arts teacher was a little lower, we do see sort of overall, on average, there's slightly higher number of teachers per school in District 10 than in the Bronx. And it's increased a little bit in the most recent year. And then here's our average share of teachers table again, where we see something very similar. So a little higher and growing over the last couple of years, share of teachers who are arts teachers in District 10 compared to the Bronx, but still a little lower than the citywide average. And again, this is going to be skewed by those, you know, very arts heavy schools. And I think that this might be my last, oh, okay, one more table. So this is the number of Cultural Development Fund programs in the district. And we can essentially see that, you know, there are about 1.5 programs per school, and about a third of all of the programs in the Bronx are happening in District 10, which I thought was remarkable. So that is that. And then that's it. So I'll stop sharing my screen and I'm happy to answer any other questions you might have. Yeah, Debbie.
So in the Bronx, clearly there's a disparity with the arts and music in the
Mhm.
Bronx. So I just needed to say that, even though it doesn't reflect here in Community Board 8, but when you do it mathematically, there's clearly a disparity for those people that live on the other side of the Bronx. And
Yeah,
those are
and I would
and
actually,
those are the young people that actually need an outlet in terms of music and art, so they don't get themselves in trouble and they have a way to work out their curiosity with music and with art.
yeah, and to that point, Debbie, I mean, I agree that it seems like relative to the Bronx as a whole, District 10 seems to be doing relatively well on, especially on the CDF programs, although a little, you know, there are fewer of the teachers overall are arts teachers. If we look at citywide, I do think there is still that gap. So I mean, I do think to a certain extent that District 10 is more like the Bronx as a whole than it is to the city as a whole. And we do see, I mean, you're exactly right. There are very stark differences across boroughs in the way teachers, arts teachers are hired and are working in schools, and the way the citywide arts program is working. Or yeah.
And the schools are the ones who apply for the funding for these CDF programs? Or
No.
are they-
So that is something that the organizations apply for. And not all of the programs that they apply for are arts education programs. There are also some organizations decide to do sort of summer concerts, or might be doing sort of public workshops, or there's a real sort of log list of the types of programming that they do. But we did see that sort of about 30% of the locations funded by this program were in schools. So while it's not solely an arts education program, it does heavily operate in public schools.
Well, that's my question. How do they get them in the public schools? Is it the school that requests it? Do these organizations call the school and offer it, or how does that
Yeah.
work?
So this is me speculating a little bit. I think it probably depends a lot on the organization and the school. So one of the things that I was actually quite concerned that we would see is that the schools that have arts teachers are also getting all the programs. That's not really what we see. We again kind of see a mix. But I was worried that it was the arts teachers who were going out, and trying to bring in the programs. Again, that's not really what we see. So, to a certain extent, that's probably a good thing. But I think it really, I know that there are organizations that have worked in schools for a very long time. So I do think it really can depend on the school or the organization. And that's probably not a very satisfying answer, but I think it goes all kinds of ways you can imagine.
I know from my own experience of being a PA president of some of the local schools, that the children are also taken into Manhattan to museums, of course, but also Carnegie Hall and the places. So they also get that, and that might add up into the Manhattan inverse, possibly.
So I think that is exactly right. So some of the programs where students are leaving their school to do some kind of arts education wouldn't be factored in here. But going back to the report that the Department of Education released, we still see that the Bronx overall, compared with sort of citywide, has fewer partnerships with arts organizations, period, whether they're going to the school or the students are coming to them. So I do think there is still some disparity to be considered, even though we can't necessarily do a super deep dive on those other programs the way we can with this particular program. So yes, you are absolutely right. And I think it would sort of boost the numbers a little if we could add that in. But I don't think it would necessarily even things out entirely.
In my time, the PA did a fundraising and got enough money to hire a dance instructor. And one of my friend's sons was in that program. He was lucky enough to be in it, and he became an actor, and it worked out really phenomenal. Something that he never even thought would happen. It was really, and he still is in California, and he's doing all kinds of things in his field. So it's very important, and I agree with Debbie in terms of where these are located, and unfortunately, not every child is privy to having that experience, and that's a shame.
Yeah, I don't know if it would be useful because it is, you are Community Board 8, but if it would be helpful to have this kind of breakdown for the other school districts in the Bronx, or if you think you have colleagues on other community boards who would be interested in that, feel free to reach out. Farah, I mean, you have our information, but that's something that we could quite easily put together.
Thank you for that.
Is there a list of the actual schools?
So we didn't release the list of individual schools. We have to be cautious because it's not our data. So there are certain practices we have about not necessarily releasing in sort of individual level school information. But the Department of Education has the same data that we have. I mean, it is their data. So if you would like to know the number of arts teachers in your schools, they should have it, and should, I imagine whether or not they're responsive can vary, but yeah.
Well, they're not as generous as you are.
Yeah, I wish there were more
They're
of me.
hard to deal with.
Yeah.
I just also wanna ask, is there a list of all these cultural programs that, we could know about? Maybe inform our schools about, or maybe it's just a
Sure.
lack of information that they don't know, you know, who to reach out to for these programs.
Yes. So I will say that the data that we use on this again is from 2022, so it's a little old, and it's not necessarily consistent year to year. So I would be hesitant to be like, yeah, here's the list of programs, and then it's like, well, this didn't happen in the schools this year for whatever reason. That said, this is DOE, but a smaller portion of DOE. There is an arts office at DOE that does a lot of this kind of. They are separate from the Department of Cultural Affairs, but they do have an arts partnerships person who might be a good person to be in touch with about that. And also the current assistant commissioner at DCLA, her name is Audrey St. Clair. She actually came from the DOE arts office. And so she might also be a good person to reach out to try to figure out like what, or also your council member who might be doing, generally the council members are also somewhat involved in the CDF process. I would say all of those folks are good places to start for figuring out how best to connect arts organizations to schools in your district.
Thank you.
That's very interesting.
I'm
Okay.
glad. I think it's interesting too. So I'm always really happy to share it. And thank you again for having me. If you think of any questions later, again, you have our email address, and we're happy to talk about this. We cover the entirety of the rest of the budget. So if you have questions about other things, please reach out to us about that too. And while the budget is really bad about being sort of it doesn't usually break things down by geography, we can at least the promise I usually make is we'll at least explain why we don't know something, which I think is a cost benefit compared to some other folks.
I've seen a lot of your programs that you put together.
Oh, great.
And
Yeah.
I didn't know until now that you actually come into the community and do this kind of presentation, but thank you very much for
Yeah.
that.
Oh, we're delighted. We're trying to do it more. So tell your friends. We are really, while we are
We'll be called
small.
again.
Yeah, please do. We're small but mighty. And we really do, the data is interesting. I have fun putting it together, but seeing it like reflective of communities and helping communities understand what's going on and how they relate to their government. I mean, that's the dream. So the more opportunities we have to do that, the happier we are.
We'll give you an opportunity.
Great. Well, thank you so much for having
Well,
me.
thank you for coming.
I'm delighted. And we'll speak soon.
Yes, hope so.
All right, sounds good. Have a great night.
Bye-bye. Right, you too. Okay. I saw, an email that they sent, and they had some of these, programs on it.
Yeah, the IBO always sends these, I guess, newsletter type announcements, so it can include the whole committee whenever they come in. And I'll just send it to all of you, and you can
Right.
pick and choose whatever
But you
information.
did send it,
I
so-
did, but I'm gonna make sure I do it more, make
Yeah.
sure I do it more often and
Because,
to everybody.
I'm sure that you'll come up with, more questions than I, so. You have either children in, the schools and, as professionals, you're also teachers, so, it's something that I want to share. Okay, Aga, are you still here? Is she still
Yes,
here?
yes, I'm still here. Yes, waiting for my
Oh,
turn.
I didn't see you, I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
You have anything for us from
Yes, so
your
just,
grant?
So just quickly, so far everything is going well. I think I haven't received any updates from any other branches within the district, but everything is going well in the library world. What I would like to highlight tonight, just quickly tell you about a special event that we're planning on hosting on June 13th, which is a Friday, Friday the 13th. And that's a collaboration between Spuyten Duyvil Library, Kingsbridge Library, and Riverdale Library. And it's going to be a big celebration of the community and the libraries and all the neighbors at Seton Park. So we're gonna have multiple story times. We will have activities for school age kids and adults. We also hoping to have a bookmobile visit us, and one of the lions come and spend the day with us, library lions. So we in the final stages of planning. We applied for permit from the city parks to have it in the park. We will be advertising it to the media, social media, and also elected officials. And we'll share it as soon as the flyers are ready. We'll share it with you as well. So again, it's going to be on June 13th, and it's we run it as a 3 libraries together for the neighborhood.
It was sort of something. Oh, the Kingsbridge, do they have a new librarian? I know the other one retired.
Yes, Martha retired at the end of last year, calendar year in December. So there is a new manager. His name is Basrat Amdoye, and I'm not really sure why he's not coming to the meetings, but maybe he's just getting ready. It's a big branch and big shoes to fill in. Martha was such wonderful manager, and
Yes, she was.
yeah, and she did it for so many years. So Biz is, I think, just adjusting and, taking one day at a time. But he's wonderful, and I hope he can join the meeting soon. I'll let him
Oh,
know
good.
to ask. Yeah, I'll let him know. He's in my, so I meet with him quite often because of the event that we're planning on hosting. And I know that he works hard and he's busy, but I'll let him know to maybe join us I know we're taking a break, right? Community board meeting is not going to meet over the summer, but hopefully
Right.
hopefully more managers will join, when we gather again for more updates. Yeah,
Right.
but he's
And,
great.
and the Van Cortlandt branch, Peter, I know is not there anymore. There was another gentleman, but he
Yes.
doesn't come either.
No, he doesn't come either. And Christopher, his name is Christopher, and yes, I believe he's doing well as well. You know what? I have a meeting with all the managers from West Bronx coming up in 2 weeks. I'll let everyone know that you were asking about new managers, so I'll try to.
Peter
Yeah,
was so active, yeah.
yeah. Peter moved to
He
Florida.
spoiled us.
Yeah,
Oh,
he's happily working in Florida. And yeah, and then there is Maria for Jerome Park, but her you met a
Yes.
few times. Yes,
yeah.
yeah.
She
So
was-
we have few new managers within the system, within the WestNet
Right,
network.
yeah.
But I'll let them know,
Okay.
and I'll try to, yes, hopefully when we gather again in the fall, more of
Right.
them will
And
join.
this event, is that going to have some flyers or let us know? It'll send to the community board,
Yes, we'll share everything as soon as everything is finalized.
as you usually do. Yeah, okay. Very
Okay.
good. Thank you. Yeah,
Okay, thank you, everyone.
thank you for being here.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Thank you.
Okay, cultural affairs, I have nothing else.
But this just came in today, so I just
What is
wanted
it?
to.
American
show you.
Revolution, Part One.
Cultural affairs.
Oh, the Historical Society.
Yeah, so they had a press release and the flyer
Uh-huh.
for an
They
event.
have, it's opening, June 8th at the Kingsbridge, Historical Society. There's something else they're doing. I read about it in the Riverdale Press,
It wasn't this, something else?
and, maybe, I can't remember. No, this goes with this. Oh, it says Part One. 250 years of the society? Is that what it said? It's an exhibit
Yeah, it's a grand opening of the exhibit.
from 11 to 4 at the old, Edge Hill Church at 2570 Independence Avenue. Okay. Does anyone want to look at it?
Oh, we have them.
Oh, you have one?
Yeah, Mary gave it to us.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're doing really good. Any old business? Any new business? Nothing? You're all satisfied with everything?
Yeah.
There has to be something wrong. Okay, and, thanks for coming. Adjourn.
Wow.
And this is the last meeting, right?
This is the last meeting of my committee. We'll see you in September, and hopefully I'll be well and able to have all my meetings.
Hopefully, yeah.
Have a
Thank
good
you.
summer.